Yes, vote at this time.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support? There is not. Moved by Mr. Huff and seconded by Mr. Wachowski. In support?
Yes, I'm sorry, Donna Hershkowitz on behalf of the Judicial Council in support of the provision, as Mr. Fewer mentioned. With regard to the editor or remediator, we have no position at this time on the other provision, but are happy to continue to work with the consumer attorneys and do hope to reach some resolution on that.
All right, thank you. Other witnesses in support? All right, witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, questions or comments from my colleagues? And seeing none, Mr. Fewer, you may
urge and I vote.
Madam Secretary, call the
Fear.
Aye.
Fear, aye. Wagner.
Aye.
Wagner, aye. Atkins. Atkins, aye. Dickinson. Aye. Dickinson, aye. Gurrell. Huber.
Aye.
Huber, aye. Huffman. Aye. Huffman, aye. Jones. Jones, aye. Monning. Aye. Monning, aye. Wachowski. Aye. Wachowski, aye.
And Mr. Fear, that bill is out. Congratulations. We'll move to item 6, which is AB 641. You may present.
Sure. Thank you very much. And with this, too, I will be brief because of the hour. Many of you who have served with me over the past couple terms know that I have continued to be very focused on the quality of care in nursing homes, something that is very important to me for my days as a public interest lawyer. Many times that effort involves real collaboration with the industry. Sometimes there's minor disagreement. We always try to work things out. This bill is a reflection of the Department of Public Health recommendations that emerged from an audit for which I asked previously that had to do with some financing issues, but DPH has gone beyond that to make a series of recommendations, and this bill builds on those recommendations. It would do 3 things. First, it would get rid of what's called the Citation Review Conference. That provision has complete support, I think, among all the stakeholders here. The purpose of that is this is a conference, or at least I think it does. Maybe there's minor opposition to that. The purpose of that conference has been to try to informally resolve matters, but everybody agrees it attenuates matters to no one's benefit, least of whom the nursing home resident. So it would get rid of that conference. The second thing it would do is it would update what is called the Class B maximum fine. Now, in the Health Committee, there were some questions, and I want to be clear to preempt those questions. This does not specify what the fine is. It just changes the maximum fine, a fine within the discretion of the department, to reflect inflation, essentially. It was $1,000 back in the mid-1980s. If you were to actually adjust it with precision for inflation, that fine would now exceed $2,000. For the sake of just clarity and certainty, it would move from $1,000 in 1985 to $2,000 now, with the department retaining discretion. Because one of the points of opposition that was raised in the Health Committee was, well, some of these Class B violations are administrative, and some of them are actually very severe patient health-threatening violations. And the fact is, the department would retain the discretion to determine what the level should be based on the severity of the problem. And the third piece of the bill is also pretty straightforward. We have many situations in this where there's both state and federal law that governs a given problem. That's also true of nursing home violations. There are federal violations and state violations. And what the third provision says is give DPH the authority to affirmatively communicate with federal authorities when there's been a violation of both state and federal law, so the federal authorities, informed by the state, can determine whether they wish to pursue a sanction in addition to what the state is pursuing. We do that in a myriad of other situations. It would extend that same proposition here to the realm of nursing home laws. That's it. That's what the bill does. I urge and I vote. I have witnesses in support.
Thank you, Mr. Fury. Your first witness in support.
Good afternoon. I'm Carol Herman with FATE, the Foundation Aiding the Elderly. Over the past 28 years, we have filed hundreds and hundreds of complaints against nursing homes for the violation of federal and state nursing home laws. Some of those complaints have resulted in Class A, B, and AA citations. The removal of the citation review conference process would streamline the citation appeal process. The Department of Public Health has been slow to schedule and hear hundreds of citations. As of February 2010, more than 600 citations were backlogged awaiting a conference, some being delayed as long as 8 years, which the California State Auditor's Report number 2010-108 clearly speaks to. A timely resolution of these appeals would provide justice for the victims and their families and provide an efficient appeal process. Increasing the B citation and fine is also very necessary. A penalty assessment should reflect the severity of the violation, and there is little deterrent for a facility to be in compliance of this when the stakes are so low. The stakes are so low. Though I feel a larger fine maximum increase should be taken, I support any increase, and I'm confident that a supplement here with input from stakeholders such as myself will address this topic prudently to discuss this proportion of the final recommendations from the Department of Health Services. Though I can identify many walls that protect ill-performing nursing facilities, the removal of the CRC process and the inflation adjusted fine maximum increase is a small step in a long journey to right these wrongs. Thank you, and your favorable vote would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness in support.
Hi, I'm Geneva Carroll. I'm a state-certified long-term care ombudsman. I'm in facilities almost every day. How would you feel if someone came up to you, held down your arm, leaving a fingerprint bruise on your arm, and punched you in the eye because you didn't want to go to lunch? And that person was fined a B citation of $800, of which they paid 60%, which is $480. How would you feel if your loved one choked to death, literally, on his morning oatmeal, and because the two suction machines in the facility were inoperable? The B citation for that was $500, of which the facility had to pay $300. After participating in several citation review conferences as a complainant, I applaud the removal of the citation review conference. These hearings are as much as 3 years after the event, and often the facility staff is changed. The effect of monetarily punishing the facility staff involved is lost after years have passed and does not protect nursing home residents. I'd like you to remember how much it costs when you run a red light in Sacramento. It's probably more than these citation fees were. And we're talking about life and death of our loved ones, of our World War II veterans and those people. I appreciate your listening to me, and I wish you would vote for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support.
Yes, Diane Segura with the California Long-Term Care Ombudsman Association, and we're in support of the bill.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? All right. Seeing none, witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chair, members, Dave Helmsen on behalf of the California Association of Health Facilities. I too have noticed and respect the author's longstanding interest in long-term care, and I do recognize that the bill has moved a little bit in a better direction since Health Committee. However, we must continue to oppose the bill. California has by far the largest body of requirements, very prescriptive requirements. We've got a robust enforcement of over 1,000 people in the Department of Public Health, and we've got an assortment of remedies. These fines are just one thing in their tool chest, if you will, to deal with problems. And our basic problem with the way that this bill came about is it was an audit, and it was recommendations from Public Health. But when you ask them what's driving in both the audit and the department's mind, it was very clear. It was to raise money in the fine account so we can support the ombudsman program. We don't believe it was constructed out of any analysis of how these fine levels are contributing or how effective they are in meeting the mission of compliance and changing provider behavior. And we believe that there are other ways and better ways to fund this program than to put pressure on both the ombudsman and the surveyors, who both have uses for monies out of these funds to spike the fund in order to make sure there's enough to go around. So unfortunately, we do agree with the elimination of the review process that we heard here, and we think that's a streamlining effect, but we must oppose the other two measures of the bill. And I would throw out that while we're looking at an inflationary adjustment here, what's being ignored is that in that 10, 12-year period, we also overlaid an entirely new system of sanctions from the federal government on these types of offenses. So we believe that there's plenty of teeth in the current situation, and for that reason don't like the increases. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in opposition? All right. Seeing none, questions or comments from the panel?
Would you entertain a motion if you can hear it over my rumbling tummy?
I will entertain such a motion. And it's moved by Mr. Huffman, seconded by Mr. Wachowski. Further questions or comments? If you would, in your close, please address some of the concerns of Mr. Helmsen, because I think I share some of them. Thank you, sir.
Well, there are only 2 points of disagreement in the bill. One is, should we be moving the maximum fine to adjust for inflation? And secondly, should we be allowing the state to communicate with federal authorities when there's a violation that is both of state and federal law? So if one zeroes in on those two elements, I would simply say adjusting for inflation, and it's, I think, since mid-1985, so it's since like 25 or 26 years now, is something we do all the time here. And we retain the discretion in the department to determine whether or not something is a minor infraction that justifies only a nominal fine or otherwise. I think most of our constituents would be outraged to know that there is no adjustment for inflation, that we're back in the mid-1980s on this. And I'll remind the committee that the amount to which the maximum fine would go is beneath what inflation would require. Just to choose a round number, it's 2,000, not 2,050 or something, I think. The other thing I would say is I don't think that the opposition's arguments meet the last point, which is, shouldn't we liberate state officials to contact the feds and say, by the way, there's a federal violation as well as a state violation. So I think this is a very moderate approach to this issue. The bill has actually been trimmed down since its initial iteration, and I'd urge an aye vote here.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary, call the roll, please.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Wagner?
No.
Wagner, no. Adkins? Adkins, aye. Dickinson? Dickinson, aye. Gurel? Huber?
Aye.
Huber, aye. Huffman? Aye. Huffman, aye. Jones? Jones, no. Monning? Aye. Monning, aye. Wachowski? Aye. Wachowski, aye.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Wagner, very much.
Thank you. Bill on call.
All right. We have one bill on call. It's item number 2, AB 126, by our colleague, Mr. Davis. The vote is 4-2. Chair voting aye. Call the absent members.
Dickinson? Aye. Dickinson, aye. Gurel? Huffman? Aye. Huffman, aye. Monning?
Aye. That
Monning,
bill
aye.
is out. And we are adjourned. Yeah, put the food bag on.